Hey guys, I'm Voilin, and in today's video I'll show you how I make my class for handling, data saving and loading, which I basically use in all my projects, including Godot. So we start off by creating a new class and let's call it Data Manager. Then we open it up in your script editor of choice. I'll be using NeoVim for this one. A guide on how to get Godot working with NeoVim will be linked in the description for all the people who are interested. First thing we will do is add a class name to the script. I'll be using Data Manager, but feel free to name this whatever you want. We do this so we can more easily extend from the script to create the data classes. After that, we create a save data function, which takes as argument a string for the path of where we want the data to save to. And for the return value, we will be using an integer. The return value will basically be to notify if an error happened when opening the file or when something went wrong saving the data or loading the data. That way the file that extends from the script will be able to know what went wrong and handle accordingly to what needs to happen if that specific error occurs. Then we simply open the file in a variable called lFile. I mainly use a underscore for function arguments and l underscore for local function variables, so just and we open the file with the right access. And then we check if an error occurred whilst opening the file. If there was an error, we just return error file can't open. All return values, by the way, will be standard Godot error enums. So we won't be creating our own enums. Enums. After that, we create a dictionary for all the data of the class. And then we create a for loop to go through all the properties of the class. When we look in the Godot documentation, you can see that this getPropertyList returns an array of dictionary values. Each dictionary has a name, class name, type, hint, and usage keys. What we are mainly interested in, however, are the name and usage values. To give a quick example of how this works, let's create a new file called data. In here we create a simple variable, and we get rid of the process function as we only need the ready function for this one, for this very quick test. Inside this function, we create a print call and pass the function getPropertyList as the argument. Now, when we run this project, you'll see a wall of text, but don't be overwhelmed by this, as the variables that we add by ourselves, the custom ones, they will be at the bottom. In here, you can see the name of the variable, test, and the usage number. Now, this usage number is important to us as we only want to get the variable properties for the data which we want to save and load. We can also go to the documentation and look up all the property usage numbers as well. That's also a possibility that we can do. And the number that we saw is a property usage script variable. This is the usage number which we will need to save only the variables and not the const variables or all the other properties that a class may have. As most of the time we don't really need to save those. Same for the add on ready variables. Most of the time you don't really need to save those. So yeah, we can just skip these. There is an exception though, as we do need to save export variables. With the current number, the 4096, we won't be able to save the export variables. But let's do that later. Now, back in our data manager script, we continue the for loop in which we first get the usage number and then the property name. And here we can see the number again, 4096, which was the previously seen property value of the normal variable. But we also have another value, 4102, as a usage number to check for. When looking at the whole property usage number list, we cannot see this number, and that is because the way that these numbers work is actually with bits. I won't be covering the whole bitwise operators and the whole bit stuff in this video, but I'll add a link to a useful page for learning about them in the description. In short, we take the property usage script variable number and we add some other tags which let Godot know that this normal script variable is also a export variable. And let's quickly show how we can get this number by going back to our data file and by creating a new variable called test2, and let's make that an export variable. Now printing the property list will also show this magical number, the 4102, which we added in our data manager, because this variable is an export variable. Going back to our data manager, you can see that we also check for the first character if that is not an underscore. If it's an underscore, we also skip saving this variable. The main reason for this is because we don't always want to have all variables be saved. And this way we can exclude variables from the to be saved data by just adding an underscore to the name of the variable. I will show this later in this video of how I use this inside of my own project, Godot, my video editor which I'm making inside of Godot, but that's for later. Each key in the data dictionary is basically the name of the property, and we use the get function to get the actual value of the variable to be saved inside of the data dictionary. And before I forget, let's quickly go back to our data class and extend from the data manager class. Next up, we store the string, but first convert our dictionary from a variable to a string. We do this as Godot kind of struggles due to a bug right now to save data properly when some variables contain custom classes which you made inside of your project. So we just convert everything to a string, so to avoid any issues. After which we check if an error occurred or not whilst trying to save the data. If that's the case, we return the error, as simple as that, else we can return OK. Again, I'll show you how I'll use this in my own personal project of how to handle the return values. I also use file.close. You technically don't really need to do this, but I got kind of used to writing that and it feels wrong not doing that because I started using Godot since version 3, but you don't really need to do this. I just do this. You could technically check for any errors that occur whilst closing the file, but yeah. Next up, our load data function, as it will be nice to be able to load in the data which we save, of course. This function also returns an integer, and we also have a path as an argument. For this function, we do need to check if there is an actual file at that path, because we need to open the file to get data from it. So we add an if statement to check if the file exists. Next up, we open the file with reading permissions, and we check for the open error again, because it's not because a file exists that there won't be an open error. Then we get the data from the file and put it into a dictionary variable. Be certain to convert the data from text to a variable again. Because this is a dictionary, we can create a for loop to go through all the keys of this dictionary. And instead of get, we use set to set the variable's value to the value of the data from the file. Then we quickly check for an error again. Then we close the file. Again, you don't really need to do this. I do this. And we return OK. Last thing to do right now, as we used an if statement at the beginning, we need to return an error code. So the file did not exist, so we return error file not found. Okay, and let's get back to our data file for a minute and create a small test in which we save the default data, which is basically 0, and then we change the variable value and then load the data again and see if the variable is 0 again. And we can see that this works, luckily. Next up, let's take a look at how this is implemented inside of my own project, Godot, a video editor made in Godot. When opening the settings manager, we go to the save and load function, and you may notice that we do use a different function to call the save data and load data, because we call it with a underscore. But they do return a value which we check against file can't open. The keen eye among you might notice that I don't check for the correct return value in load data. This is something I also just noticed. Something to change later. Yeah, it's still in alpha right now, so nothing to worry about. But let's take a look at the variables. The variables which I don't want to be saved start with an underscore. These are kind of temporary, so yeah. And the variables which I do want to be saved don't have an underscore. It's as simple as that. Next up, let's take a look at the project scripts of this project. And here we can see that I call the variables with an underscore temporary variables. And the other ones, data variables. Again, underscores don't get saved, no underscores get saved. This data managing script was made thanks to the help of a great person on the Discord server, by the way. So big shout out to him. I don't know if he wants his name to be mentioned or not. So yeah. Anyway, feel free to join our Discord server if you are interested in talking about Godot and talking about our video editor that I'm making. Link in the description. But then there is one more thing before you guys all hook off and go further with your life, which could be helpful for people making games, as you probably want to encrypt the user data. For this, you can basically change the name of the function, add a pass argument, and change the open function to open with an encryption. But yeah, that's about all that you need to change to this function, and you can do the exact same for the load function to open the file with the whole encrypted and pass stuff. Now, I did make a script with the normal save and load functions together with the whole encrypt file open, encrypt with pass file open, and compress file open functionality. This script is available for my Ko-fi supporters. And talking about my Ko-fi supporters, a big thank you to them for helping me make these kind of videos and to support me through the journey of making a video editor inside of Godot. For more Godot tutorials, or for maybe you want to see the devlogs on the video editor, feel free to subscribe. And did you learn something new? How about giving this video a like to let other people know that this video is worth their time? And yeah, I'll see you all in the next one. Thanks for watching, and by the way, I use Arch Linux. Bye bye.